What kind of people do you secretly feel sorry for? Story 1. People who are angry and you owe said at everything all the time. Everything is a personal slight. Angry at a mistake the cashier made. Angry that a lane is closed. Angry there's kids on the street, etc. Not just annoyed, but full-faced angry. Just such a miserable, miserable life. Story 2. People who have to be in a relationship and just can't bear being single. It almost always leads to terrible long-term relationships they won't break away from. Lasting unhappiness and crushing loneliness. The things they were afraid of in the first place. Story 3. People who follow the life script, aka choose career based on income status, meet a partner, marry, have kids, etc., or what they think society expects of them, even though it makes them miserable. I sadly know too many people like this in my life, and they either cope with some sort of addiction, alcohol being the most common, get sort of a midlife crisis, and start living the way they actually want, or get more bitter and cynical the older they get. Some of them didn't even stop to think what they want before choosing that path. They just thought that's how life goes. And just to be clear, I'm not saying everyone who follows the life script is miserable. I know plenty of people who are happy with that life too. Story 4. People who used to be beautiful and are now unattractive or old. And I'm not being funny either. I actually do really feel sorry for them. I know it's got to be hard to look back on what you used to look like and know that you can never look like that again. Story 5. The physically and mentally disabled. I know it's a terrible thing to say, but growing up, whenever we had those big music concerts and they would have the special ed kids sing to the audience and the audience would all stand and cry, I just couldn't help like everyone was making fun of them. That despite all the applauses, it felt like the audience was mocking them for having a great performance, when in reality, it was terrible. Just feels so bad. They'll never be able to have the life others do. Story 6. People with mental illness that can't get the help they need. This country, for all its wealth, refuses to provide the resources to people and their families to help people with hospitalization, medication, and housing to help people live their best lives. Of course, who wants to pay more in taxes to provide this sort of assistance? Story 7. People that all they talk about when you get together is gossip about Theo friends that are not present. I just stopped going to those reunions because of the unacceptable behavior, even when trying to talk about other topics. They are illiterate or just want to go back gossip. Story 8. Popel, like my mother, she literally gave herself a stress-induced seizure because she was having health issues and trying to run a business and finish school with having a full-time teacher job. She can never just relax. She always has to be working, even though she really needs to slow down and fucking go outside and be active. Story 9. People who have super rich parents. These parents often take full control over the lives of their kids to a freakish extent. What people they hang out with, what hobbies they have, where they go on holiday with friends, and where not, because it can only be good if they've been there and they had a good time there, what they will do for a living later on, what clothes they are going to wear, what their political views are, etc. Yes, you have all the money in the world even as a kid, but is it really worth it if you can't decide what it's going to be used for? People who have grown up poor or without parents have experienced way more hardships. But those hardships often act as learning experiences, and that makes them better people when they eventually grow up. But never being the one to tell what your life is going to look like, and always have to look at your parents for guidance, that's terrifying to me, and I often feel sorry for them. Story 10. I don't know if it's feeling sorry, but I have a soft spot, compassion for a family of immigrants. Mom, dad, a kid or two, trying to make it, not meaning any harm to anybody, hoping for a better life for them and their kids. They are stand-up people, willing to work hard and have happy, hopeful spirits. Do not have the toys or the best of anything, really, but they are good-intentioned people, clean, sincere, genuine, and even grateful for what they do have. I see some these folks trying to make their way and try to help where I can. Story 11. As an ICU nurse, the patients that don't have an advance directive. Often the families argue over what medical interventions to do, and we end up keeping them alive long after any meaningful recovery. It feels like we are medically torturing these patients because the family can't make the decision to let go. Story 12. People who have never had an original thought. Cancel this. Boycott this. Don't support this creator because they did this. Half the time they're abandoning things that truly made them happy for the sake of not being seen as problematic. Even if it's media that has no controversy, it's just cringe. They'll refuse to touch it because everyone else says it's cringe. How sad to abandon the things that bring you joy for the sake of your popularity. Have you never read A Bad Case of the Stripes? Story 13. Kids who tried to go to school and/or young people trying to establish themselves in a career during COVID. Some kids were better at remote learning than others, and even if they were, They missed out on valuable educational and social opportunities, such as field trips, sports, dances, and so on. COVID basically robbed a generation of kids of 2 years plus of their school careers. For the adults, WFH is all well and good, but when you're looking for advancement, being present in meetings and visibly working on big projects are good ways to get noticed. There's only so much you can tell about a person from a tiny box in a Zoom session. Kiss 2 of your peak earning years goodbye. Story 14. Anyone who feels the need to document so much of their life on social media to brag. It's the modern-day equivalent of calling into a radio station on a Friday night BC they were partying. If you're having that much fun, why are you calling into a radio station? LOL. Story 15. I tend to think angry Karens Kevins have some medical issues causing them to act nuts. Like Karens are having menopause rage or some other hormonal imbalance, or Kevins have some sort of TBI. After working in pediatrics and with the elderly, I tend to think that they have some sort of underlying condition, as that sort of behavior is common with certain conditions. Story 16. Insecure people, and I don't mean the type of insecurities we all have. I mean the ones that are so obvious and cripple their lives, always looking over their shoulders, thinking everyone is out to get them and taking everything so personally and speaking validation 24/7. It's so cringe. Story 17. Parents with severely disabled kids, teenagers. Their life was completely over the moment their child was born. People can make all the jokes they want about healthy children taking over your life, but a medically fully dependent child is completely life-ruining. No hobbies, no friends, no way to save money, totally life-eclipsing. Story 18. People who never leave their hometown. I'm the only person in my whole extended family who doesn't live in the same county where I grew up. Also the only college grad, the only one with a passport, and one of only 2 who are married. I'm not saying my life choices are the right choices for anyone, but there's a whole big world out there. Go meet some people you haven't known since kindergarten. Story 19. Men in divorce and family courts. The courts still act like women are 1950s housewives, with no personal income or ability to have a personal income. So the men get taken to the cleaners, and custody of children go to women almost by default, unless there's undeniable evidence she's done something truly heinous. It's still a huge uphill battle for men, when in a lot of cases it should be even ground these days. Story 21. People, especially women TBH, that constantly need validation that they're physically attractive by posting 10+ selfies or thirsty vids on social media, but in reality they are extremely insecure and hate themselves, which is why they need that constant validation, though it doesn't actually help anything at all. Story 22. People who smell but don't seem to know. I have a theory they don't realize it because it's just a reflection of how their housing is and they become noseblind. It's also possible they were just never taught good hygiene, but it really is such a disadvantage in every aspect of life to stink. Story 23. People that use Snapchat. Back before I divorced my ex-wife, when I suspected something was up, I began watching her Snapchat. It wasn't the Snapchat that finally gave it away. It was discovering a male just a friend's driver's license on the passenger floorboard of her car one morning after she had to work all night. Whoops. But while following her on Snapchat, I noticed she would post dozens of selfies every single day. She would often check her Snapchat and spend an inordinate amount of time reading the comments under the 25 selfies she posted every day, all day. I noticed everyone else seemed to be doing the same thing. I even posted a selfie or two and checked the looking good comments once or twice, and then got bored. Pointless. I did not feel the need to take another selfie hours later and post yet another photo of myself and then check the comments again. For what? What purpose does Snapchat serve, other than a de facto stealth communication method that deletes conversations, making it a primo method for vain, self-centered, cheating narcissists like my ex? Post selfie, read comments. Look at other people's selfies, leave comments. Post another selfie, read comments. Post another selfie. I find it sad. I just pity the people that use it, stuck in some pathetic addiction to being validated. Story 24. People who never had someone to help them understand finances and saving for retirement. I have so many friends in their 30s living paycheck to paycheck, and they still buy expensive shit they don't need all the time. My buddy could barely pay rent this month and missed a concert because money was tight. Gets a paycheck and buys $1,000 in computer parts the next week. Story 25. I feel like a lot of these answers are people I openly feel sorry for. At least the group as a whole. I probably wouldn't tell an individual I feel sorry for them. My answer is librarians. There's a lot of required secondary education, and finding a job can be surprisingly hard. Librarians are usually way underpaid for the amount of education that they need. The job is kind of like being a teacher, social worker, researcher, and archivist all rolled into one human. Libraries have always been chronically underfunded, and now they're dealing with a lot of political horseshit on top of everything else. I think the job market might have gotten a little better recently, as it seems a lot of older librarians retired during the COVID years, but hot damn. Story 26. People who struggle to find lasting, long-term relationships, but clearly long for them. I have a few people in my life who are chronically single, yet don't appear to have many outward flaws. I think the life bell curve unfortunately leaves a few poor souls behind, forever unmatched. It's quite sad. Story 27. People who care so much about what internet strangers think of them, or make a big deal out of getting likes and comments. It's so strange to me, and I think it's sad that people try so hard to get validation from people they don't even know. Story 28. I remember one time when I was a kid, I was walking through a parking lot with my mom, and we saw a car that was filled to the brim with trash. Literal heaps of trash up to the roof of the car, and every seat filled except for driver's seat. My mom made a comment on how disgusting the car was and how the owner must also be disgusting, but I made a comment about how they must be lonely, because there was nowhere for a friend to sit. And my mom stopped in her tracks and said, "Oh," and looked at me and said, "Thank you for opening my eyes." I feel sorry for people who are so obviously hurting in some way, but society can't see past the horrible cover. Story 29. Gonna sound like an edgy teenager for a second. People who are always upbeat and positive about bad things. Obviously, being happy most of the time is probably great, but at some point it's just ignoring reality. I had a friend like this, amazing guy. Every now and again, something would break through that shield, and he would detonate in an extremely self-destructive and unhealthy way. I've seen a few other like this, and they were mostly in the church I used to attend. Everything here is extremely anecdotal, but when I meet people like that, I sympathize with the meltdowns they may be having behind closed doors. It's not a phase, Mom. Story 30. Many people. People who feel the need to compare themselves to others. This particularly mean girl, IK, she's mean but popular, probably got one real friend though. I mean, her friends call her Cancer, and she doesn't know it's her. Can't say I feel that bad for her though. People who feel the need to brag in social media or find ways to make it seem like they have it better. I am this lawyer who keeps on posting about how good her life now is, but MSG's me on private borrowing 10K. No, I didn't give her any. My cousin Q and her family. When we travel internationally, she brings many clothes with her, and she changes every time we're on a diff location to make it seem like she's there on a different day. Same with her mom. We like vacationing for only 3 days, and they'll post different pictures for weeks on end to make it seem like the vacation is longer than it should. Story 31. People who believe social media is equal to real life and measure their looks, quality of life, and a few other things to people who spend all day getting the right angle and location captured to sell a false dream. You would be surprised how many people are affected by this. People spend money on the most superficial things for what? Life has more depth than this, yet social media pushes the glam, and those who accept this as reality fall prey to pursuing this impossible reality. Story 32. People hell-bent on proving their haters wrong. I've watched decent people spiral and turn into assholes, all because they long for validation that'll never come. The sad truth is, people will treat you like shit and move on with their lives. They won't lose an ounce of sleep over the things they've done. Yet somewhere, there's someone working themselves into a frenzy over folks that don't even remember their name. It's sad. Story 33. People who make it a point to let other people know they do, in fact, receive attention. I worked with a girl who would loudly complain about getting hit on at the bar we worked at, or would come up to me and say something wild like, "Those girls at table 15 are trying to convince themselves I'm ugly," even though I'd been standing behind the bar the whole shift, and they never paid her any mind. I've met her type before, and they're never homely, but also not very stunning, and I feel sad how desperate they can be for a little validation. I'm not saying I look much better than them, but it's just their desperation to be seen that's very heartbreaking. Story 34. Trolls, even when they attack me, even when I'm sticking up for someone else. You don't get that way unless you're hurting. And I don't mean it in a passive-aggressive way of like, their pain is a worse revenge than you could ever exact on them. It's more like, I can't get on board with you, but man, do I understand needing to purge terrible feelings. Story 35. Tradwives. Regardless of how happy they say they are, how happy they convince themselves they are, I can't help but feel sorry for them. Their husband controls their entire life. They don't have an education, usually. They don't have work experience, usually. They don't have control over finances. They're trapped. If their husband dies or decides to leave them, they have nothing. I know many of them online have said some awful things I certainly don't agree with, but that doesn't keep me from feeling sorry for them. Especially as someone raised as a woman in conservative Christianity, I think I see what my fate could have been if I hadn't broken free. Story 36. People with borderline personality disorder. I'd never say it to their faces because it's not helpful or kind, but my sister struggles with it and I can't be around her anymore because of the lies and attempts to edit history to make herself look better. She'd rather have a relationship with me that includes everyone we both know, thinking I'm some sort of pathological liar, than own up to the fact that she used to hit me in a way that left me permanently damaged. I refuse to live like that. I haven't done anything wrong by telling people the truth as to why I have so many dental implants at my age. I feel sorry for her because she can't keep friends or family around once they find out she'll tell lies to make her behavior seem less bad or make other people seem worse by comparison. She has these fits of rage where she's just not safe to be around because of her sheer size. She has no concept of how much bigger she is than other people and how easy it is for her to hurt them. Edited for spelling error. Story 37. People who feel the need to impress, whether it be by clothes, cars, or a job. A good example is my BIL. Dude works for an insurance agent and he goes to all of these functions and retreats. He was telling me that it was pretty much required to get shit-faced, and if not, you'll get made fun of. Like, fuck that. I'm a grown man. I'm not about to get plastered just for the opportunity to network. If I want water and fries in between drinks, I'm getting water and fries.